You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every episode. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, welcome back to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This, my friend, is the podcast that is 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time and you've got the scars and the wounds to prove it. No matter what, there's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. And today is absolutely no different. I'm going to be joined by Matt Burns, all the way from Vancouver in Canada, but we'll get to Matt very, very shortly. Before we bring Matt on, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit are helping you build the business you imagined. So if you started off your business thinking it would be easier to run, maybe more profitable, maybe more fun, maybe it was easy to get clients, it was more systemized so you didn't have to be there and have the business relying on you so much, then maybe what you need to do is you need to talk to the team at maxmyprofit.com.au, because if those things haven't happened for you, they can make it happen. maxmyprofit.com.au. All right, well, as I alluded there, today we have Matt Burns coming on the show. He is a very special guest joining us. He's an experienced HR executive, board advisor, speaker, and the winner of Canada's most innovative use of HR technology back in 2017. So we'll dig a bit and find out a bit more about that. He was also winner of Canadian HR Team of the Year in Retail and Hospitality last year. Now, talking about last year, which was 2018, Matt founded the Global HR Collective, which is an organisation with one singular goal, and that is to raise $1 million for causes supporting mental health advocacy and women entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, my absolute pleasure, buddy. My absolute pleasure. Now, tell me a bit about this winner of Canada's most innovative use of HR technology. It's got me interested.
Yeah, innovation in HR, usually things you don't hear in the same sentence, eh?
Well, they call that an oxymoron, don't they?
Yeah, I've been called a moron once or twice in my career as well, so that works out well. I'll be honest, it actually started from a place of stubbornness and of the idea that constraints drive innovation. I worked in retail, which means I'm often having to convert $1 million ideas into $100 concepts. So when I came into my last organization, we didn't have any HR technology to speak of, but I knew that technology would be a key part of our strategy. So when I went to the market, I talked to all the large end-to-end enterprise providers. I don't need to mention names. Anybody who's familiar with the HR technology landscape knows the providers. And because we were, as they clarified, a small to medium business, the sales process felt a lot like this. Hey, Matt, we love the fact that you're interested in our solution. If you want to buy it, we would love to have you as a customer. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to buy off the shelf. We're not willing to customize any of the platform for you. And you're going to have to change your processes to fit our technology. Oh, and here, by the way, it's going to cost you 6 to 7 figures. How does that sound? And maybe I'm old fashioned and maybe I'm a bit stubborn around this, but if I'm going to cut you a check with that kind of size, I want some say in the final product. So I wasn't happy with the answers that I heard. I asked my IT team, hey, can we do something different? Can we, instead of buying a single solution with multiple modules, can we go out to the market and find different vendors for each of these different modules and tie them together on the back end ourselves, thereby saving a whole bunch of money and at the same time, getting the functionality we needed by working with vendors who wanted to partner with us? And the answer was yes. We did so over 12 months and delivered a solution that ultimately worked best for our organization, saved us a bunch of money. So our board and CEO and CFO was very happy, and ultimately transformed our organization to where the following year, as you mentioned, we won the best HR department in Canada, largely on the strength of that technology stack, because we were able to automate all that manual administrative work that nobody in HR signed up to do and focus our finite resources on actually helping the employees in the organization.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. Now, is this your first business or have you always been in business for yourself? Tell us a little bit about the Matt Burns story.
Yeah, happy to. No, this is my first foray into business. So I actually spent 20 years in the corporate world working with some of the biggest organizations. And when I came out of high school and started into the business world, it was at a time when, of course, working for those big enterprise, global companies was seen as a real badge of honor. It was the kind of jobs where your parents would brag about you to their friends at dinner parties. You had the security of working for those big companies. And I had a lot of success and had a lot of fun along the way, worked with some great leaders, some great organizations. But ultimately, I found that as my value structure started to shift and as the world started to shift along with it, that it just made sense for me to leave kind of that corporate world behind and launch a social enterprise where I could take the skills that I built over 20 years to impact positive changes outside the single four walls of a company and broader society.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? What's been the biggest impact for you now as an entrepreneur, having left, working corporate for so long? Was it harder than you expected, easier than you expected?
I'm the worst boss I've ever had in my life.
And
what I would say by that is that when you're an entrepreneur, there isn't any off hours. So, if I'm sitting down on my couch and I've had a 10, 12, 13-hour day and that Netflix is sitting there on the screen, I'm going, should I watch Netflix? You know what? No, I'm going to send about 300 more messages to my clients and get some more feedback on products and services. So I would say just the fact that the day never really ends. When you are a corporate customer, and for your audience members that know this world, when you're a corporate customer, you get to unplug at some point in your day because you have the security of a salary coming in every 2 weeks or every month. But as an entrepreneur, you're always balancing satisfying the demand that you've created and building the next wave of demand. So you could always find something to do. And I'm the kind of person that has kind of built a career out of working harder than the person next to me. And I've kind of carried that over to the entrepreneurial world where I'm spending a lot of time working. And at the same time, though, trying to find that balance has been really difficult for me. I would also say is that a lot of the skills that I built as an executive are just simply not transferable as an entrepreneur. So I'll give you an example. A standard day as an executive for me before would have been I'd come to the office at 7:30 or 8, and I'd spend probably 9 to 11 hours every single day in back-to-back meetings. And those meetings usually looked one of three ways. The first way was, hey, Matt, we have a problem. Can you solve it? Hey, Matt, we need your help with resources. Can you help rally them or support them? Or I have an individual personal issue. I need you to help me mediate either a team conflict or an individual one-on-one conflict. But basically, people would come to me with a problem and I would solve it in a 30-minute, 15-minute, 60-minute conversation. Now, I tried to actually apply that approach, by the way, in the first couple of months of being an entrepreneur, and then realized that I had no one actually to pass the work on to. So that is a big difference is when you're executive, you have teams of people you can leverage and support and have different skill sets that can help support you in satisfying the work that you're driving. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're obviously strapped for resources. You're doing all the work yourself. So I've learned that less is more, and that it's not about, there's a very difference between activity and productivity. As an executive, activity is seen as meeting. As an entrepreneur, it's about trying to find that balance between satisfying demand and also developing that next layer of business.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? And so, you talk about the fact that you were looking at this, software solution. Tell us a bit about how the business, was that what ignited the spark in you to start your own business, or was that just something that was another project that you were looking into? Tell us a bit about what got you started.
Yeah, so I would say that was my last that project, and that award was on the heels of my last kind of corporate assignment. And what I would say is, as I considered how I could leverage the skills of what I developed over 20 years in business to offer a product and service in the market, I clearly went to the areas where I had the most amount of success. And as we alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, the fact is that the majority of HR people that you will connect with are simply not comfortable with things like technology, innovation, analytics. However, I always have been, and that has distanced me from other people in the profession for as long as I've been in the profession. And ultimately, as I thought about going to the market and offering consulting or coaching or other services, I realized that would be my unique value proposition. So I wanted to double down on that. And the fact that I'd had the practical experience of actually delivering on that type of a mandate made a lot of sense. And retail in particular, as I mentioned, because of those really constrained budgets, it actually is translated really well across multiple industries, because it doesn't matter if you're in financial services or technology or retail or hospitality. Everyone nowadays is trying to do more with less. And my ability to try and stretch a dollar has really benefited me with clients across industries as they seek to try and find their own solutions to their own problems.
I think it's always interesting to hear where people end up. And you stayed in your area of expertise because you were in HR before, weren't you?
That's right. Yeah, I spent most of my time, 15 years in HR, the last 5 to 7 as an executive leading HR functions. So I had seen this from a 20,000 foot view. And because of that, and because of my experience in the industry, it gave me a lot of credibility with the people that I was working with now in a client capacity. But I'll be honest, one of the things that surprised me was it was almost instantaneous. The moment I left my corporate job and became, quote unquote, a consultant, people started to treat me differently. And I realized that I had to almost start over again, improve myself, because now that I was working for myself, there's this resistance and this defensiveness with some clients around, can you actually solve my problem? How much of the work that you did was the result of the things that you offered versus how much of a tailwind did the company give you? And I've been able to demonstrate with the clients I'm working with now that I was able to do a lot of the strategy and architecture and implementation of these solutions. And it's gone very, very well. But there is an element of having to prove yourself again in a different forum, not to mention, as I mentioned before, that I'm having to learn new skill sets and teach myself new skills all along the way, which is an interesting complexity, if you will, in starting your own business.
Yeah. So what was the transition like? Because I know one of the things for people when they leave their job and they're very good at what they do, they tend to go into their own business and they spend all of their time working in the business and not enough working on the business. Did you find that was the case for you? Did you underestimate maybe the other skills that you needed and what you had to do in addition to what you were already good at?
I would just say that, so I didn't underestimate it, but I still made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know what I didn't know. But I was lucky in that I have a really strong group of network around me that is like people I can ask questions to and bounce ideas off of. There is always going to be a learning curve. So for anybody considering kind of jumping from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, there isn't a smooth transition. You're not going to slide from one to the other if you don't have the experience in doing so. You're going to have to go through those bumps and bruises, but to be kind to yourself along that journey. I've been lucky. I've made a lot of mistakes up front. I knew I was going to. I'm an experiential learner, but I try not to make the same mistake twice. What I would just say is that, again, it's not so much the functional knowledge. It's more the application of the knowledge, which is different. HR in particular is not a function that traditionally has to sell itself. I mean, we're in the company. You don't have a competition. If you want to deal with HR, you deal with me. Whereas now I'm in an entrepreneurial capacity, there's lots of other options. There's lots of consultants. There's the big 4 consulting firms. There's individual providers. There's lots of substitutes for what I offer in terms of products and services. So I'm having to sell and market myself in a way that I never had to inside the 4 walls of an organization.
So how do you go about differentiating yourself from the competition? It sounds like there's a fair bit of competition around in that space. What do you do to make yourself different?
Well, so you're right. And the problem is actually even more acute in that a lot of the skills that HR performs are skills that a lot of leaders think that they can do themselves. So if you think about the traditional function of HR, it is the hiring and onboarding of staff. It's the training and the performance management of staff. It's paying them. It's all the administrative functions that business leaders have decided are best sourced and solved by somebody else. But if you talk to most senior leaders, they'll tell you, I have great judgment in picking talent. I can train and develop leaders myself. But they bring HR in when they have too much of that on their plate when they're operating their business. So not only is there a lot of competition in this market, a lot of the skills and the services that we provide are quote unquote easy to replicate if you choose to do it yourself. So I'm competing with the inertia of, do I even want to have help at all? And if I do, why would I choose you? So how I go about doing that is content marketing for me has been the panacea for all of my problems. I got onto LinkedIn really early on, about 3 years ago, and started sharing content marketing and my own perspective on issues that I thought were worth sharing. It's how I developed an audience on LinkedIn very quickly without spending any money on marketing and sales on that platform. I was sharing my opinion on things like the future of work, organizational culture, blending culture and purpose and technology, big data and taking data and turning it into action. And by sharing my thoughts, it demonstrated a knowledge of myself in the industry. And as I've gone into the entrepreneurial world, I've just been more mindful about being more specific about my thoughts as it relates to my products and services. And that creates a dialogue with a consumer. By the way, it doesn't convert sales. It begins a sales conversation that I still have to get into and still need to work with that client to A, identify their problems, and then B, convince them that I could be a potential solution to those problems.
Mm.
So content marketing for me has been absolutely critical. In addition, I do some public speaking around the world, and that halo effect that it gives when you're on a podcast and when you're speaking in front of an audience around the world, it gives people the impression that you know what you're talking about. But again, it gets your foot in the door. You still have to go that final step to close that sale.
Yeah. And would you say there, I mean, there are people out there that aren't willing to put the effort in? Because that content creation thing is, I call that a farming strategy. You know, you can go out hunting, for example, you can go out cold calling and you could pick up a lead and a sale within the next week. But if you do content creation, that's unlikely to happen because you've got to put that consistency in. Do you think a lot of people aren't willing to do that? Is that why you see that as a uniqueness for you?
I don't know if it's unique to me, but I think you're right in that content marketing is it creates a big, long funnel. So what I like about content marketing is that if it's done really well, it creates an ongoing dialogue with a consumer base. And it creates stickiness with the consumer because they understand who you are in the market and they know how to connect you in terms of products and services. So retention is very high, but you're right. It'd be much easier if I picked up the phone right now and called 1,000 customers. I could probably close 5 deals. However, content marketing allows me to spread my knowledge. Instead of a one-on-one conversation with a cold call, I'm able to share my message with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. So what I'm doing essentially is kind of stirring up some interest in what I have to offer, and it makes those next phone calls much more productive in the context of either a relationship or a partnership or a sale. I think the reason most people don't do it more often is 2 reasons. The first one is, as I mentioned, it takes a lot of time. So you have to be willing to spend 3, 6, 9, 12 months putting out consistent content and funding it yourself, either in the production and the creation of it. And let's be honest, a lot of folks aren't comfortable being on camera and putting out video and writing articles. You have to be willing to do that in terms of content marketing. And people want instant gratification. They want to get results immediately, and there's nothing immediate about content marketing. And the second thing is that it ultimately, in terms of content marketing, exhausts a lot of resources for very little benefit when you look at actually the long-term horizon. It's such a long-term payback that it can be very easy just to kind of want to short circuit that and get into that instant gratification. So I think from that perspective, I think just it's the impatience around people that want to go through that process. Also, let's be honest, it's a new way of marketing. So traditionally, marketing has been item and price. You tell a customer, and I was in retail, so I know this world very well. We used to tell the customer what they should buy. Try doing that now. That doesn't work. You have to create a relationship with the customer. They have to trust you. Otherwise, they're not going to buy from you. And there's no longer this halo effect around brand. People want to know what's behind the brand before they're willing to spend their hard-earned dollars on what you're selling, whether you're a large organization or an individual contributor like myself.
Yeah, it's so important to know that now, because I think there was a time when that was really the only thing people could go on was the amount of branding that something had. And now we're seeing things that have no brand, like these, for example, Kickstarter campaigns going crazy because they've got a great story behind them and they've got a great purpose. And I think even some of the people that start these Kickstarter campaigns are surprised by how successful they are. But it does come down to the story sometimes. It does come down to the person, the personality, and the purpose of that particular personal product.
Well, people are frustrated. I mean, we can get to a long conversation around the current state of the affairs around the world. Let's put things back to business. There's never been a time where consumers have less faith in big brands to deliver across a whole different spectrum of products and services. And the scorecard that they use to measure the efficacy of those brands is broader and broader and broader. No longer is it good enough to offer a product and a service at high quality at a good price. Now they want to know your politics. Now they want to know your values, how you treat your employee. Now they want to know how you treat customers, how you treat the environment. Like they have the consumer is so much more savvy and sophisticated and has such a higher threshold for what they're willing to, to spend their hard-earned dollars. I don't know how you can create that purely with brand. You have to create an ongoing dialogue with them and prove to them over time that you're the real deal. Additionally, you can't hide behind this cloak of, well, we're an organization, so we're not going to share things with the consumer. Now people demand information. So having that, removing the cloak, if you will, around that just creates that ongoing relationship. But like any good relationship, it takes time. So I was very deliberate about building an audience, developing some thought leadership. And even though I did that, it still took me 4 to 6 months to close my first client based on my thought leadership, because there was an element of social proof that had to be reinforced with products and services in a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, once again, it's a long game, isn't it? So you've got to be prepared to put that effort in. Now, you talked about when you kicked off, you made some mistakes, and you like to experience. I think I can't remember exactly what you learn from experience. And I think that we can learn a lot from other people's mistakes. It doesn't always mean we're going to avoid them, but we can at least, if we do hit the same rough patches ourselves, we can know how to manage them better. What were some of those mistakes you made in the early days when you started your own business?
Yeah, I think my mistakes aren't unique. And I made some mistakes that you wouldn't think an HR executive would make. So here's 2 examples for you. The first one is the first person that I hired in a freelance capacity was an absolute train wreck. So I'm somebody who has my career was building teams that would hire individuals for an organization. And yet the first decision I made around hiring somebody was based on a referral of somebody that I trusted. And ultimately, that first resource just didn't work out. Now, I was sophisticated enough to identify that early on and make a quick pivot from that individual. But making a bad hiring decision on my first hire certainly didn't do favors for my confidence and did set back the business a couple of weeks as we had to replace and upskill somebody else to come in. So that was the first mistake. And the second one, which I'm still kind of sitting with, to be honest, is when I started this journey, because my comfort zone was as an executive, and especially in HR, I mean, HR is a function where you don't have any power. You have to lead and influence people to get things done in an organization. I never had the proverbial hammer. So what I would do in most cases, if I had an idea or I thought the organization would benefit from a program or a process, I would develop that process. And then I would socialize that with my peers, with different layers of the organization to get buy-in. And then once we had a critical mass of buy-in, then we would take it formal and public, and we'd implement it in the organization, and it would be successful. Whereas if I didn't get that alignment, there's a good chance that people would ask why they weren't involved in the ideation and may potentially be naysayers as we were doing rollout. So I learned in my corporate career early on to get alignment and to work towards that collaborative approach. I applied the same methodology as an entrepreneur. And when I first started thinking about ideas that I had, I looked for collaborators. I looked for people in my industry, other consultants, other people in the HR space, and was looking to collaborate because that's what my comfort spot was. But I looked around about 60 days later and said, I'm really passionate about this. And the people that I'm collaborating with aren't as passionate. So they're not meeting their objectives in the way that I'm meeting mine. And meanwhile, I'm exhausting a whole bunch of time and not producing anything because I have all these half-developed projects. And I realized early on, especially for entrepreneurs, that everyone is working for themselves. And ultimately, people are going to do what they need to do to put food on their tables. And I understand that, respect that. But by not diversifying my approach and taking things on myself in some cases and simply defaulting to collaboration, I had all these half-developed projects and nothing to show for them. So what I've learned now is that my strength actually is in forging ahead and stubbornly moving forward when other people are perhaps not. I've always been an early adopter on ideas, and I've always been an early adopter and make bets on myself. So now I'm just doing that more as an entrepreneur. And if people want to join the journey, great. They can contribute to what I'm already doing, and they can contribute to other ideas. And if we can collaborate, fantastic. But if we don't, I can still move forward. Whereas the first couple things that I developed were predicated on somebody else's effort, and I was often left holding the bag.
So once again, it comes down to people. So like you said, it's not something you'd expect from somebody from the HR space to have issues with people, but it sounds like there's a couple of examples there where it comes down to people doing what they need to get done or selecting the right person. So how do you go about attracting the right people into your business then? Because I mean, I think you would agree that anybody who is going to succeed greatly is not going to do it on their own. You need a team around you. So
Absolutely.
How do you go about finding the right people? How do you know that you've got a good person versus someone who's not great?
So I think first what I'd say is, I think all the people that I've mentioned, even the individual who I first hired who didn't work out, there's no malice. these individuals didn't wake up and say, how can I make Matt's life more miserable? But for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. So I think I put that in context. I don't take that personally, but I learn from that going forward so that I don't make the same mistakes twice. But this is where I think content marketing comes into play, because the people that were attracted to what I was doing were people that found me on social media, said, hey, I love your idea. I love the way you think. I love the way you do business. I'd love to come and collaborate and work with you. So by putting out content, you're not only attracting customers, but potential partners, collaborators, employees, and that really can serve a lot of different interests. I've talked a lot about the idea of blending marketing and HR, because for me, the skill sets are very, very similar. It's inside voice, outside voice. You're conveying with a consumer base, whether it's an internal consumer or an external consumer, and trying to compel an action where you don't have the authority. And you're using things like segmentation and communication and determining audiences and curating messages for that particular audience. A lot of commonality there. So what I do is I really just put out my thoughts, my values, my belief, the way I feel about business and the way I'm doing business. And that tends to attract and people self-select in and self-select out. There are people that like what I do, people that don't like what I do, and that's totally fine. That's the way the world works. But by being deliberate and being transparent about who I am, what I'm all about, it's a great initial filter for people. And then I think it's about spending the time to develop a long-term relationship with an individual, which is why I like content marketing, is because I can develop that ongoing dialogue where it's never going to be perfect, but there's a level of trust that's built that allows you to sustain those mistakes or those weaker periods. Whereas if it's just simply transactional type sales approach, that consumer is only going to be with you so far as it benefits them in an explicit way. And they're happy to substitute you for somebody else if they get a better deal somewhere else. Whereas if I'm building a relationship, the price sensitivity and elasticity is just completely different in that context. So I'm always working with people to say, hey, this is what I'm all about. This is me. But also, I think equally as important, this is where I'm going. And this is where the brand is going. And if you come along this journey, this is our destination. If it connects with you, fantastic, hop on. And if it doesn't, no problem. We're going to be here when it does.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're really, I mean, you said you're an early adopter, and you've adopted the philosophy of just putting all the content out there, and you're not using that just to attract customers, but also attract team members and other, I guess, partners and JVs, etc. So what is that? Are you just doing that on LinkedIn, or are you sharing your content on many other platforms? Tell us a bit about that strategy.
Yeah, so I think one thing, I took the Christmas break like most people did and thought a lot about the business. And as I left the corporate world in September, formally left in October. So I'm still very early on this journey. And I think I took December as a period of time where I could unplug. There's not a lot happening in the business world. Everyone's on vacation. And I took stock and said, what's working really well and what's not working well? And I came to the realization that despite the fact that I'm an HR person, which means that I'm generally not front of the house. I'm generally not the person you see in press releases. I'm not the person you would see on camera. That's usually reserved for CFOs and CEOs and CMOs. That my strength actually is in my ability to communicate. But I've always done it in an internal context. So my content right now is on LinkedIn, but I'm currently building a couple of other channels by way of podcast, by way of digital magazine, so I can scale and distribute content in a much more thoughtful and far-reaching way. My content strategy is going to involve 3 different mediums. I love video. I think there's no better way to connect with a consumer than video. They can see the whites of your eyes, and there's a level of relatability that exists with video. I do love audio as well, because the fact is that video isn't always convenient for some consumers. Either they can't have the audio on, so you have to have subtitles, or they're on the train, they're on the bus, they're doing the dishes. So a podcast makes a ton of sense because they can do that while they're doing something else. And then third is I love text. And the great thing about the technology we have today is if you film a video, that actually is 3 pieces of content. You can extract the audio and pull it out separately. You can also transcribe to text. Now you have the same content in 3 different mediums. So what you're going to see from me as we go through 2019 is taking the same content and just leveraging it over and over and over again across different channels. So if you want to read what I have to say, great. There's going to be an opportunity for you to see us on Medium. If you want to hear what I have to say, great. Podcasts on iTunes and Google Play. And if you want to watch what I have to say, great. Here's YouTube and here's LinkedIn videos. So we're going to have, you get to engage with our content in the manner that best suits you, and you can jump back and forth whatever you feel like.
Mm. And do you, like with this content, do you have a content calendar? How do you work out what content to create?
Yeah, I have a calendar. So again, working as an HR professional, we would develop internal communications calendars, and we would predicate it on where are we trying to get to? Like, what's the goal of the content? Is it to convey an opinion? Is it to inform? Is it to inspire? Is it to educate? So I'm doing the same thing now. How do I find the right balance between giving the consumer value without asking for anything in return? But then also, how do I also educate them on products and services? If they choose they want to engage with us in a commercial context, how do I make it easy for them to do so? So I'm thinking about those in the context of content. And then I think about, how do I best convey that to a consumer? Should it come from Matt? Should it come from a collaboration with somebody else? Is that best going to be conveyed over a video or over a text? So I'm always thinking about trying to meet the customer where they're at, because I don't want to create resistance at any point in the process. Because if they can't find me the way they want to consume that content, I potentially lost a consumer. And in the case of a social enterprise, I have a commercial interest, but I also have a societal interest. I mean, I'm trying to raise $1 million for charity here. I'm not going to do that alone. And I have been very stubborn up to this point about not collecting donations. I want to earn that $1 million by generating so much revenue that I can give away the majority of it to those causes, which means that I have to build that stickiness with the consumer and spread a message far and wide. Whereas if I was just trying to sustain my own lifestyle, the ambition and expectations would be far less. So having that ongoing relationship with my community, if you will, also makes the content marketing and that ongoing dialogue so critical.
Yeah, because you've got to continually communicate and educate, haven't you? What
Absolutely.
Yeah, what content have you found? Have you found anything that has been working better than something else, like a particular type of content or a particular topic that you find resonates more with people that are looking through and reading your information or watching or listening to what you're up to?
I think it really depends on what you're sharing. So I give you an example. When I launched the social enterprise and made my $1 million commitment publicly, that had to be a video. That is not going to resonate if I write an article on that. I did write an article, by the way, but I think the most compelling piece of the content was when you could see the emotion and the purpose and the authenticity of where I was coming from and why it was important to me. That doesn't convey as in a compelling way in text. So I want to make sure that was a video. But what I would say is that if you are either an individual contributor or an entrepreneur or even an executive, I wouldn't get so bogged down in the medium of content. If you're not doing anything today, just start doing something. If you don't want to be on a camera, I get it. I spent years asking myself, do I really want my ugly mug spread all over this planet on all these different channels? And the answer for a long time was no. I wanted the privacy. I wanted to keep my personal life separate from my work life. But I ultimately realized that to achieve the goals that I'd set for myself, I was going to have to step out from behind the shadows and be front of the house, which for me makes video and audio and text the right channel. But don't get bogged down in that. If you're a really talented writer or even just an okay writer, and that's the way that you best communicate your thoughts and feelings, start writing articles, write a blog post, start trying that out and see how that feels. And spoiler alert, whether you're video or audio or text, the first 10, 20, 30 of them you're going to do are going to be absolute rubbish. Go to my LinkedIn profile from last 2 Augusts ago. The content's terrible, but it was part of the journey for me to get to this point. I would not be where I was today without the learnings of going through that process. I mean, my first videos were shot with an iPhone with a camera 3 inches from my face. It looks ridiculous, but I had to go through that to get to the place that I'm at right now, where I've been able to say, okay, stand back from the camera. You got to use subtitles. I talk too fast. So Matt, you got to slow down when you speak. Like without that feedback loop, I would never have been able to graduate the content to where it is today. And there's no shortcut to that. No one is going to be amazing their first video. Everyone has to go through a learning curve. And the best way to shorten it is by just starting.
Yeah, it's such a good tip. Sometimes just bite the bullet and do it.
Do it.
And I can relate to those first few videos where the phone's too close and makes your nose look bigger and your face rounder. It's not a good look, is it?
No.
So tell us about the Global HR Collective. Why did you decide to raise this money? Where did this come about?
Yeah, I had a transformative experience. So about 2 years ago, I was at a place in my career where I was architecting large restructuring activities, which for those who aren't familiar with the corporate lingo, I was firing a lot of people. So as organizations are going through transformation and restructuring, I was the person they would call on and say, Matt, you seem to have a bit of a gift for balancing empathy and also pragmatism. So can you lead these activities and help us transition the company? Which ultimately meant that we would be exiting and severing hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I found myself in a situation where it's not a very fun job because the names on the spreadsheets take on greater meaning after you do the activity enough. And it's not an activity people put their hands up for because there's a big emotional toll it takes on you. Even though you're not the person who's being impacted, there's a level of guilt and a level of personal, again, guilt's the best word for that you take with you, whether you're involved in the activity or not. And I asked myself, because by the way, the reward for doing them well is you get to keep doing them. I asked myself, do I want to do this the rest of my life? I was in my early 30s. I was a Fortune 500 executive. I was making great money, great bonuses, but I wasn't happy because I wasn't doing what I thought was purposeful work. I ultimately felt that I was rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic because every quarter there was another restructuring and another restructuring and another restructuring. So I said, I got to change up the circumstances that I'm in right now. I got to unplug from this environment and try two different things. The first one is try to work for another organization that was going to give me an opportunity to try and build a culture that I thought made sense. And we've talked about how I did that with technology at my latest company. The second thing I did was I started an MBA. And I'm not a big believer in formal education as the solution to all the world's problems, but an executive MBA gave me two things. One was a global exposure because I chose a program that took us to Brazil, Mexico City, Nashville, in addition to Vancouver, and a global network of people who thought about the world the same way that I did. And when I was in Brazil, I met with a group of students that were in a university entrance preparation program. So these are kids that are 17, 18 years old, coming out of high school, going into university. And Brazil is like a lot of countries in the world that are unlike Australia and Canada. There isn't a social safety net. So if you don't have the income to sustain your lifestyle, you don't get caught by a net. You just fall and hit the ground. And there are millions of people, tens of millions of people in Brazil that are below the poverty line and are struggling just to feed themselves 7 days a week. These students were amongst that group. They were gifted in a whole bunch of different ways, but they came from underprivileged backgrounds. And they were telling us their stories about why they were in this program. Because in Brazil, university is public and subsidized, but high school is public and private. So if you have money, you send your kids to private high school, they go to university, they get good jobs. If you don't have money, you send your kids to public high school and you take your chances. At the same time, when you have a child who is of high school age, they can actually be in the workforce and contribute income to the household. And when you have a family where you can't afford to eat 7 days a week, sending your kid to school comes with a sacrifice. You don't get that income in the household. So these kids were kind of bucking the trend and in this program, but they were feeling the pressure from their families. I mean, they got the pressure of, do you need to be going to school? Can you not go to work? Is this really worth your time? This is a long-term lottery ticket. Do you want to spend 4 years in university to have a chance at a job? Or would you rather just go to work where you can earn money for yourself? They also felt pressure from their friends because, as you can imagine, they were selected amongst thousands of applicants. The majority of individuals who may even have wanted to go to school didn't have that option because that wasn't an option available to them. They had to go to work. So there was a bit of resistance in their local communities. But when we asked these kids why they were in this program, why they're putting up with all this societal pressure, all this family pressure, all this, kind of their group of friend pressure, the answer was consistent. It was for our families, for our communities, and for our country. If we do this well and work really hard, we can get jobs that can transform that and pull our families out of poverty. And I'm sitting there going, wow, do I ever have this world wrong? I'm in an executive MBA that I paid for in cash. I'm sitting in Brazil on a trip that I paid for, again, in cash. I'm going to Buenos Aires the following week for a vacation because my program is quote unquote too intense. And I'm going, that is not suffering. That's not struggle. What these kids are going through is actual struggle. And I ultimately felt incredibly selfish and that my perspective, my value structure needed a complete realignment. So I asked myself, how do I best go about doing that and still leverage the skills and abilities and gifts that I had developed over 20 years in business? And that's how the Global HR Collective came to be, is I'm using the experience and the relationships and the network and the gifts that I have in a way that I can monetize them in a entrepreneurial context. I don't have any limits on income potential. I don't have any limits on having to toe the corporate line. And then as we make revenue, I just choose to give it all away because I'm not materially driven. And I've had a life where I had all those traditional material things that you would look for. And by the way, as somebody who had a professional success very early on, I mean, I was, again, a Fortune 500 executive at 31. So by most traditional measures, I had, quote unquote, made to the top of the mountain. But here's the secret. There isn't a top of the mountain. There's just more mountain. It's never enough. There's always another project. There's always another assignment. There's always a bigger bonus check. And as I attained more and more success, I actually became less and less happy. Because, by the way, to get to that point is what you have to sacrifice to have that kind of success is relationships. It's family. It's your health. And ultimately, I was on a path to where I was streaming headlong for divorce, for heart attack, with a family and friends that didn't want to spend time with me anymore. And it just wasn't worth it. So now that I have a social enterprise where I can blend profit and purpose, I can spend time in developing the things in life that for me really matter. And that's more than a paycheck. But I still have to compete though. I mean, I worked for Walmart. I love to compete. So I can compete in the market with products and services and do really well for my clients. And then as I make revenue for that, I can give it all away and feel like I'm doing something for broader society at the same time.
Such a good thing to be doing. And I think, that alone, just hearing that story of how you got to that point is extremely inspiring and touching. I think, it's so easy for anybody who hasn't been at, quote unquote, the top of the mountain, or what appears to be the top of the mountain, not to realize that up there is just more mountain. And I think, it's so good of you to share that with everybody, because I think everyone here is striving for some top of the mountain that maybe doesn't exist.
There is no top. I'm sorry, I don't want to shatter people's dreams. And this was the biggest gut check for me, as a kick in the stomach. And I realized there's just more mountain. So I realized, convincing myself in my head, the narrative I built up in my brain was the sacrifices you're making now, Matt, are worth it. Every time you get into a relationship that you have to end, or the fact that your family won't return your phone calls, or the fact that you are incredibly unhealthy with your diet and your fitness, you're sacrificing now so you can benefit in the long run. But you never get to the long run. And some people never make it. I know tons of executives who unfortunately have had heart attacks and had divorces and deal with mental illness and substance abuse because they're fighting and scratching and clawing for a chance to have success. And then they realize it's not worth it. So I try and live my life in a way that says every single day, I'm trying to deliver purpose for myself, for people around me, and for broader society. And I have way more satisfaction with the way my life is now. And I'm making way less money than I ever did because I'm giving it all away in a way that is also enriching society more broadly. And at the end of the day, we're all citizens on this planet. And we're at a stage right now where we have to start to give back more than we take. And that's why I talk about consumerism. Consumers are going to increasingly demand of the companies and the businesses they work with, what are you doing for society? What are you doing for the broader good of things? Because if you're making so much money, why can't you do something more than just give it away as dividends? Why can't you give it back? And that's why I wanted to, for me, I didn't want to be another consultant. I didn't want to be another large organization. I wanted to be somebody who did something different and ultimately tried to create a template for the next generation of social entrepreneurs out there that are doing great work and prove that you don't have to choose between profit and purpose. You can have it both ways. And you don't have to go to the extreme that I did. You don't have to give away most of the money. You can give away 5%. You can give away 10%. You can give away a portion of your time and your services to charitable causes to give something back. But at the end of the day, if you're taking more from society than you're giving back, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
And how are you tracking on your $1 million goal?
Doing really well so far. So surprisingly, despite the fact that this is very early on, the fact that I've planted a flag in the ground has drawn people to me. So I'm working with a company right now in the UK that's already committed to donating $100,000 to the cause.
Well done.
3 months into this project, if we're able to help them achieve certain performance targets, which we're well on our way to doing. And I know that the hardest thing for me is going to be the first one. Once we show that we can actually deliver, it's going to be a snowball from there. And frankly, as I get better at this entrepreneurial piece, I'm confident in our ability to do two things. One, drive a lot of top line revenue by raising awareness of what we're doing. And then two, I spend so much time in retail, I can do things really inexpensively. So my overheads are always going to be very, very low. As I mentioned before, I'm not materially driven. So I don't have aspirations to have a big office in Sydney or London or New York or Vancouver. I'm quite happy to work from my apartment and work with people so that I'm able to give away most of that fund. So what requires for me to sustain my lifestyle is very, very small. And as a result of that, we can offer products and services at a price point that other people cannot match. So I'm not carrying overheads, but yet still we value our products and services in the market in a way that says we're actually offering a high quality product at a lower price point. And then we're going to also, as a consumer, you get the benefit of all that value and knowing that the money that you're spending is going to a greater good. So just because today you can't do that yourself, by supporting us, you're actually supporting broader society.
Yeah, well, good work, mate. Good work. It's great to hear, what you're up to, and to hear that entrepreneurs are creating businesses that are giving back, and the whole philosophy behind it is just incredible. We do something similar through B1G1, which is buy one give one, which is a corporation that is all about companies giving a percentage or a dollar amount to less fortunate people around the world to help them out. And I think it's such an important thing for entrepreneurs to be able to do. You have the power within, don't you? So it's such a great thing that you're doing.
And I want to be very, very clear, because sometimes people in my space can take a bit of a moral argument and kind of stand on their high horse. I want to be very, very clear. I'm not passing judgment on anybody who doesn't do what we do. That's not my place to do that. And frankly, I am not in a position to make that judgment, because for 20 years, I just sucked from society and worked for large organizations that did much the same thing. So I'm not passing judgment. However, if you are not making that move because you believe it's not possible, I intend to prove that it is. And that is what the goal of this is trying to do, is provide an example that works for us. And if other individuals are inspired to do something similar in their own ways, that's success for what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, well, good work, mate. I take my hat off to you, because it is, like I said, it's you don't judge anybody that's not doing it. But it takes a courageous person to make a move as such, and to publicly announce that they're going to be doing it as well, because now I'm sure there's a lot of accountability for you to make it happen as well. So
yeah, the morning after that, I got to be honest, the morning after I made the announcement, I woke up at 3:00 and I was like, what did you just do to yourself? Like, what? Why? Of all the things you could have done, could you not taken a sabbatical? Could you not have just chilled out for a week and thought about it a bit longer? Why did you have to do this? And you're right. For me, it's about accountability. I've said it. Now I have to deliver. My entire reputation that I've spent 20 years building is on the line. If we don't deliver and we aren't able to satisfy that, I'm going to have to explain why. And I wanted that accountability because I'm so confident in our ability to achieve it. I want that pressure because I think ultimately people are inspired when you show courage. And I intend to do that with the Global HR Collective.
Very inspiring indeed. Now, we're just about out of time, Matt. How can people find out more if they want to get involved, if they want to support the cause, or or any other questions?
Yeah, our website is www.globalhrcollective.org. I have content on there. I have some listing of our services. The website is still very much in an iterative phase, so please don't punish me for my Squarespace skills. At the same time, I live on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me, LinkedIn, Matt D. Burns. You'll see my ugly mug on there. My mother loves the photo. I'm not a big fan of it. But I'm on there sharing content, sharing thought leadership, engaging, collaborating. If anybody wants to have a conversation, happy to do so. And if you're interested in working with us in a commercial capacity, please do reach out.
Fantastic. Now, we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes, gang, so you can go to businessbrainfood.com.au, episode 210. So that's businessbrainfood.com.au, episode 210. And anything we've spoken about today throughout today's chat, you'll find links to that in the show notes. And that way you can reach Matt. Go to his LinkedIn page. He's got a lot on his LinkedIn page. I can attest to that. I've had a look there myself, and any of those other things as well. And I can't thank you enough, Matt, for coming on the show and sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us. I know it's early days for you, but you're doing some great things, and it's very inspiring to see where you're heading. And we'll be watching closely to see how you go with your progress in time, and help, I guess, hold you accountable to achieving that $1 million goal. And I guess probably surpassing that would be not unquestionable at all. Now, all we've got left to do, my friend, is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
I'm not sure, but I'll give it a shot.
All right, here we go. The timer has started. Favorite app on your phone?
Ooh, LinkedIn.
Favorite book?
A Man's Search for Meaning.
Your biggest addiction?
Social media.
If you could be a superhero, who would you be and why?
Batman. He's got all the coolest gadgets.
What frightens you the most?
Not having freedom.
Complete this sentence. If I ran the world,
then something's gone horribly wrong because I don't want to be in front of the house. I want to have other people have success.
do you have a hidden talent?
A hidden talent? No, but I have a bit of a quirk. I'm the kind of person who will show up at the airport without a plane ticket and then hop on a plane based on what's on the board.
And what, just buy a ticket there and then?
Buy a ticket there and then, pack a suitcase. Don't know if you're going to Hawaii or to Montreal. You just hop in the airport and see what happens.
Well, that is quirky. Well, there we go. We've had the buzzer. Thanks once again, mate, for joining us for the Business Brain Food podcast. It has been very inspiring, and we look forward to watching your success in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. So Matt Burns coming on, and make sure you go and check out his LinkedIn profile and some of those other links that were mentioned. He's got a great purpose and a great attitude. He's doing some amazing things, and as an entrepreneur that you should be following, because I'm sure there's a lot that you can learn from his journey. Now, today's episode was brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit is expanding, and we're looking for business accelerators to join the team. Now, if you think you've got what it takes to join the team in helping business owners achieve their goals by building the business that they imagined. So you might be a business coach, business consultant, or advisor. You'd like to become one. Head across to maxmyprofit.com.au, click on the About tab and learn about becoming a business accelerator. Alrighty, well, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. Thanks once again for tuning in. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure you leave some honest review and your feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or the Google Play Store, wherever it is you can leave your feedback. We'd love to get your feedback, and it does help other people that stumble across the show to decide whether or not they should listen in and continue to listen. And it's been absolutely fantastic. I've been Ben Futrell. You've been absolutely marvellous for listening into this episode. Until next week, have a profitable day. See ya.
You could be